and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina Joshi, and with me today I have Candice Smith. Before we jump in, just wanted to give a quick introduction and a background on myself. I am a consultant and design researcher in Kaiser Permanente's Health Innovation Shop, where I design and develop digital health products and solutions. And I am so excited to bring on our guest today, Candice Smith, who is the founder and CEO of Caregiven. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Awesome. Well, to start things off, how about you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey as an entrepreneur at Caregiven?
Absolutely. A little bit about myself. I had a career in nonprofit management, and prior to founding Caregiven was just living the regular life. And then my father got sick, and I became a caregiver. Becoming an entrepreneur is a lot like becoming a caregiver. It's not something I ever planned to do, but when the occasion arose, caring for my dad or founding Caregiven, it was my only option. And so I stepped into this opportunity. The similarities didn't end there either. As a founder, everyone has an opinion on what you should or shouldn't do. The same is true as being a caregiver. There is no standard path. And that has been really interesting to navigate. And as I reflect, I have the demeanor for both roles. Life happens, you learn, you pivot, and you try again. You have an idea of what the outcome is that you're moving towards. You just have to figure out the best path to get you there. And so
Wow,
that's my journey.
that's beautiful. So many parallels. And
Yes.
speaking of, Caregiven and learning more about the platform, can you share with us what is Caregiven's mission and vision for caregivers and for patients?
Yeah. So I found it Caregiven just as a promise to myself. No, I didn't want another daughter to feel as I did when caring for and ultimately losing my father. So at the basis of Caregiven, our goal is to really empower those caregivers to rise to the occasion. We've distilled down the idea of removing the fear in caregiving, whether that's the fear of needing to be cared for or the fear of being called to give care. And the fear of actually, how do you do it right? So really at the essence, that's our moonshot. That is our mission. And in a broader context, we want to decrease the stress and overwhelm of caring for someone. It's something that we all will do. It's something we all will need to go through. And our vision is really to change the narrative and the conversation around these topics so that it's a partnership, it's a collaboration, it's not a give and take. And ultimately then, we want to fundamentally change how care is given and received, taking it to, an empowering opportunity rather than where it is today.
I love that kind of aspect of empowerment. I think that's so important. And speaking of empowering caregivers, would love to learn more about some of the platforms that you're using and really how does the Caregiven app and website promote engagement between patients and caregivers?
So we are a little bit different in that we feel the way to best provide care or for somebody who needs care to receive it is really to empower those most motivated in their care, which is normally their family, their friends, however you define family. And so you use the term patient. We are leaning towards using the term care partner again to facilitate the give and take. And so what our product does is we almost are like a translation service. We understand that the healthcare system is complex. We also understand the highly emotional pain and experience of being a caregiver. So how do we translate to create a unique ecosystem where people are collaborating, where there's shared decision making? And we do that by simply mapping a care journey, helping people understand the similarities. The illnesses will be different, but there are a lot of common things that families do. So we map that, and then we nudge or provide advance notice and education to everybody, the caregivers, that care recipient, when something is forthcoming, when other people like them have decided to fill out a specific form or have a particular conversation. And and it's not just a healthcare issue. So caregiving really aggregates all of the interactions that happen in a caregiving event: financial, familial, emotional, logistical. It's you can't strip one piece out.
Yeah.
We actually bring it all in, and so that it is a consistent experience. And we do that as well, using a chatbot and all of the technology that exists today to help people live more meaningfully and better. We have just applied that technology to caregiving. So again, what I found in my experience was I needed 6 apps to manage my dad's care.
Mhm.
And why?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that hard. So we simplify.
I love that common thread of community that you've kind of woven in through the entire platform. I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and kind of diving in a little bit more to the platform itself, what are some of the different products or features that you've created to really promote not only the well-being of caregivers, but also kind of that smooth transition and interactions that you were talking about when it just comes to navigating what it means to be a caregiver.
So the backbone of our product really is this idea of a care journey, which began when I first started talking about how do you create a solution. Everybody's like, you can't do it. Everybody is different. And I thought about my own maternity experience, and every woman is different. Every family situation is different, but yet we've mapped a maternity experience. So why couldn't we apply that at the end of life? And so we looked deeply into the research and created a roadmap to the end of life, knowing it's not linear, knowing that you revisit different milestones, but we've created these milestones. And then what we've done is we've overlaid what activities are most appropriate during those milestones. So loosely based on Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 phases of grief, a milestone will be settling into the role of caregiver, really understanding anticipatory grief, understanding the fear of losing someone. That's not the right time to be saying, hey, Dad, can I have that pocket watch? We help people put those activities in the appropriate stage where it's most reciprocated. And then again, there's all the practical aspects of caregiving that there are wonderful products out there that do, but we've combined in, what documents do you need to collect? What is the difference between a post and advanced care plan? What is appropriate to us? And so we have document storage, we have family stories. And the important thing is we try to deliver those suggestions to that informal caregiver of when to have those conversations. We give conversation starters. Sometimes it's really hard to say, hey, I want to talk to you about your advanced care plan. We actually provide how to have those conversation starters. And as our product matures, they will be nuanced because having a conversation with my dad would be very different than having a conversation with my partner or my sibling. So how do you nurture that? And again, there's a tremendous amount of research and support out there when we just are bundling that into caregiving as well. The other primary aspect, and this was hugely important for me, is I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew I should have known it. So we really try to think through and use previous users' behavior to help others predict what is coming, and then remind people, Dad's got a doctor's appointment on Tuesday. Remember, he needs to fast the night before. They will ask you for your advanced care plan. Make sure you have it. All of those little things that otherwise fly out of your brain because you're overwhelmed.
Wow, that's incredible. It's definitely a one-stop shop, it seems like, for a lot of this.
That's the vision. Absolutely. And we try to take the persona of that trusted advisor. We don't should people. We say, here are the options available to you. And again, going back to that translation piece, as a path unfolds, different opportunities rise up. Mom is doing great. Mom had a fall. Mom doesn't want to go into a facility and she can't live with me. People don't know that there are incredible resources to help seniors or others age in place. And so how do we point people in those right directions? And it's, while it sounds overwhelming, it's not that complex. It's a lot of using technology to help deliver the right information at what we call the aperture moment.
Gotcha. That's incredible. One of the things that I know you've kind of talked about really was the importance of investing in communication structures even before, creating the product. How has that investment really helped you, connect with your audience and improve user engagement?
So, one of our fundamental values at the company is really seeing people where they're at, and knowing that those people who come to caregiving are in some level of a crisis, whether they're at the beginning of the journey, at the end of the journey, some point in that care continuum, which is about a 4-year care journey in the US. And so we knew that we needed to develop a product and invest in a product early on, that we could learn from the users, not at the expense of users. And so that has been sort of one of the things that has differentiated our path as a startup, is the considerable amount of time, design thinking, bringing in caregivers, saying, do you want the coach mentality or the therapist, or really working on the tone that speaks to individuals so that they are most receptive to hear what's coming in. And really where we began in thinking about the communication structures, what are the pains we're trying to solve? What are the universal pains? And then how do you design around that versus, I want this person to know that. No. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What do they need in the moment? And then folding that in. And so that communication structure, uh, really investing in it, is paying off, because we are actually seeing the behavior that we had researched and had anticipated. If you need somebody, or feel somebody should be receiving a little bit of education about how to advocate for themselves in a work environment, how can we deliver that at the right moment in time with the right tone? We bring subject matter experts, helped us shape that. And again, that person is most receptive, and it's paying off. We know that there's so many ways we can go, but the fact is that we have a great mechanism to bring in what content and advice and action is appropriate, how to make it culturally safe, how to include diversity, so that it's not a cookie cutter thing. And it took us longer to get to market because we needed to get it right. And nobody has really said to us in the 2 months since we've been in the market, oh, I don't like the tone. This isn't speaking to me properly. You've made a bad situation worse, which is our worst fear.
Right, right. No, I think it's so important to spend the time to actually really understand how can I provide value, to the people that I'm trying to help. So I think that's amazing that you are really able to spend the time and focus on making that happen.
Well, and another important thing, and I know you'll appreciate this, is using technology to help humans be more human, not replacing humans. But
Yeah.
the fact is that fewer people are going into the caring professions while people are needing additional care. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you empower those who didn't go into the caring profession? They're just a son, a daughter, a neighbor, a friend, but now they have the opportunity to give care, and really figuring out what tools they use, and then delivering a tool that meets them where they're at. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that you kind of mentioned earlier really was this concept around all of the other emotional needs that kind of go into being a caregiver. Would really love to learn more about kind of the caregiver well-being portion of your platform, and how you're really using that to support or even combat caregiver fatigue and burnout, which we know are very common.
Yeah. So this was one of the most enjoyable experiences for me when we were building the product. Is I thought it was just me that couldn't manage a job caring for my dad and caring for my children, who were both under the age of 8 at the time. I was burned out, and the idea of self-care just really baffled me. And so when we started thinking about what is the best way to decrease the stress and overwhelm of caregivers, it's to normalize the journey and say, this is the hardest thing that you will be going through. And just accept that and let's move on. So what we do with our app and the emotion based is going to, a lot of the research like Chris Voss talking about, you have to name and label the emotion before you can convert that person into an action. So that holds true for both the caregiver and their care recipient. We use our chatbot to say, how are you doing? And give some emotions. And if they're saying, I'm really overwhelmed, we're not going to say, hey, why don't you talk to your loved one about their do not resuscitate? Instead, we're going to guide them to an activity or some reading or something that they can do in that moment that honors where they're at, but then also enables them to recognize that they are contributing to the caregiving circle. Yeah. So we know too, when you look at other products out there, the Calms, the Headspaces, reminding people to take a moment and center themselves decreases the stress and overwhelm as well. So within our app, we collect that information. We then can help anticipate what are going to be the highs and the lows, and then have designed around that so that we can really support those people to have a much more normal experience, knowing that there's going to be the highs and the lows. I think it sounds really complex, but the reality is, and I'm sure you know this, is if you ask somebody how they are, they may lie to you, but they're going to do a gut check. And it's that gut check that we know that using technology, they're going to say, you know what, I'm really sad. Whereas they might say, I'm fine to a human. And that is helping us again, inform what type of support we give to that individual. We also have some, quirky and fun features. One of our advisors, a lovely woman, had shared that when her husband was unwell, he would be getting treatment and she would be playing Candy Crush. And she's just like, I wish somebody would have given me permission at the time to just check out. She said that would have changed all of the guilt that I had for years. Wow. And it's that type of permission, like, here's a cat video, or if you are really angry, scream into the void. Yeah. And just, again, giving people the permission to feel and be human, I think ultimately will result in a much healthier caregiver experience.
That's incredible. That's a very emotionally intelligent platform. That's amazing. And so, I think one of the things, just kind of thinking and really expanding on this concept of, caregiver burnout, I think, a lot of us can say that we kind of collectively went through, playing some level of a caregiver role kind of during this past year in the pandemic, whether that was, delivering groceries to our grandparents or actually managing their healthcare needs. Has the, pandemic really influenced anything? Have you kind of learned anything from this past year at all?
Oh my goodness. Well, of course. So prior to the pandemic, when I would be talking about caregiving, I had to make the case that caregivers were a market, that they were a large market, and that they needed support. And I know you're going to ask some questions about women's health, but I don't know how many times pre-COVID I was said, oh, my wife has no problem managing the care for my mom. And it's like, okay, so COVID changed that. I can just put up an image of a woman sitting outside of a care facility trying to have a connection with her mom, and that truly resonates. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you have pioneers and leaders in the space like Melinda Gates, who's talking about the care economy in broad terms. And elder care is the biggest part of that care economy, much bigger than childcare. Not all of us choose to be parents, but every one of us have parents. And so how do we care for them? So when I think about what the current administration is, the type of resources that they're allocating to support individuals, that would not have happened if the COVID experience hadn't touched everybody at some fundamental level. So that has been fascinating for us. And then how it's also manifested in our product is the fear of aged care facilities and being separated from your loved one, there's an immense opportunity to, again, soothe those fears and empower one generation to understand that they have more options. You can age in place for longer. You can really achieve the twilight years for your loved one that they want, and that there's resources and there's funding out there, and maybe it's a stipend, maybe it's a a discount on insurance. We can help people accomplish that as well. So, but at the end of the day, everybody knows
Yeah.
that fear of not being able to be there with their loved one, and so it's helped us make the case.
Mhm. It's one of those things where it's very, very unfortunate that it took a pandemic for people to really understand the value of this space,
Absolutely.
but here we are. Wow.
Absolutely.
You know, and I know we were going to touch on this a little bit, but really wanted to get your take on women's health and kind of the role, especially that women play in the caregiver space. When do you think that women's health will, no longer be considered this niche category for investment and really kind of given a more priority role?
So I've thought a lot about this question, as both as a founder and as a woman,
Mhm.
and um, well, I'd love for there to be considerably more investment into women's health, family tech, and the care economy generally. I
Mhm.
get, who doesn't want more of that? Um, but once you get those big venture dollars going into a niche market, it's going to change the type of technology and solutions that are
Mhm.
coming out of it right now. And so I
Yeah.
really struggle with this. Niche investors, or investors who are investing primarily because they want to see a technology, a solution, a pain solved in the world. Um, that is a very different type of investor, and that's the type of investor we want at caregiving, who are our partners in collaboration, not pushing us to the
Mm. Right.
um, the greatest financial gain. uh, so on an immediate level, that's where my heart goes, is there are very generous funds out there and investors who are really investing in startups that are creating the change we all seek, without the the unicorn labels and all of that get all of the press. So I think that's one level of my answer. And then on the
Mhm.
other, how do we accomplish most things in life? And it's through financials and economics. There
Mhm.
is a shifting in economic power. We know that.
Yeah.
We may not have accepted it, but over the next several decades, nearly $70 trillion in wealth is going to be transferred from one generation to the next. And as much as 70% of that is going into the hands of women. And so
Mhm.
that may not change today, and it may not change the sad numbers of investors who invest in women. But what that will do is change who is dispersing capital. And, if that's women making decisions, they are most likely going to be investing in solutions that really impact and fundamentally change what they need in
Yeah.
life. And so I'm really optimistic about it. I think that in the next 20 years, when we actually see the considerable resources going to women,
Mhm.
that's how it's going to, the change is going to be.
Absolutely. And I really like the distinction that you made, I think, when it comes to the investor side of really making sure that you have an investor that really aligns with the mission of the product and of the company. So definitely think that that's an important call out to make.
Well, and it's part of my evolution as an entrepreneur, that journey of,
Mhm.
in the beginning, you think, oh, I just need the money.
Yeah.
And then it's like, while I need the capital, what I need is someone who understands how I'm deploying the capital so that we accomplish the vision. It does put a little bit of another layer on the shoulders of a founder team or a startup to really source out who those individuals are.
Mhm.
But I think it yields results in the long run. It's a methodology that, going back to one of your earlier questions, when I think about how Caregiving is going to grow as a company, we've started building relationships with funds that only invest in Series B, but I want them to see us grow,
Yeah.
and get to know them, as well as they're getting to know us, because then you're going to be in better alignment.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And then I know we talked a little bit more about some of the technology that you are all using, whether that's the chat, the integration. Would love to learn a little bit more about some of the other, technologies that you're really excited about in terms of incorporating it into the Caregiven app. And I think just also what else that you're seeing that's new in the healthcare space that is really exciting for you.
The excitement comes, my heart is in this aged care, or really we're looking at the solutions that support families from that moment in time that they realize there's a ticking clock. It may be 5 years, maybe 8 years, but how are we helping people really maximize the time that they have left, which is something that gets, infused back into our product. Our goal, as we said, is to decrease the fear. It's to simplify, to take all of the administrative tasks and put them in bite-sized chunks so that families can take care of those and then have more meaningful time as a family together, not in strife because my brother is in denial that dad is dying and my mom won't let the hospice nurse do her job. We help families mitigate that as well. But really have those connections so that there is a good end of life. And after you lose your loved one, we decrease the depression. I personally feel that the loss of a loved one without conveying what needs to be conveyed is one of the largest contributors to our depression epidemic. So how do you help families have those conversations before it's too late? So that is something that is infused into Caregiven. A future feature that we're working on is the family stories piece. And there's wonderful companies out there that are doing this very, very well. And we want to hopefully partner with them. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but getting people to talk about their lives is hugely important. It's the one thing caregivers wish they had done more of after they no longer could. So how do we bring that back throughout the care journey? And then how do you use technology to bring people closer to connect? So in my case, my dad would tell a story. He went to the Merchant Marine Academy talking about certain classmates. I could push out through the app his story and they could say, "Oh, Al, you forgot about this." And then there's a dialogue happening between my father and his classmates that would never have happened. And it's all stored in our app so that now, 5 years after dad left, I can draw back on that experience. And so it's, again, and these are happening in every other aspect of our lives. I mean, look at the child apps out there that really help all of that. So we're just bringing that in and putting in this context. So
that's incredible. So it starts from a caregiver app to almost like a time capsule or like a memory book at the end.
That's exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And imagine moving forward, right? The opportunity to make my children to make my grandmother's family recipe as told by my dad through a video. I mean, that really is sort of the beauty of where we are as a society, and the technology is in 20 years, it's not going to be the olden days. It's going to be, oh, dad was on video. Now the video may not be, like a hologram or whatever, but they can still know that person, which is hugely important.
Yeah, I think, wow, that just resonates so deeply with me, just really about finding ways to like have those connections with, future generations and past generations and kind of having all of that in one place. I think it's really beautiful.
And then circling it back to the healthcare environment. So we do the same methodology for the collection of important documents. So it's one thing to check boxes on an advanced care plan. It's another thing to have your loved one communicate, I'm checking this box because I really don't want a feeding tube. And then when that family is, in front of their provider and the provider is like, we need to look at the advanced care plan, you're not making a choice. All you have to do is listen to the words of your loved one, and you're honoring what they chose for themselves. That fundamentally shifts that experience for families. It's like, I'm not choosing to say goodbye to my mom. I'm choosing because she's saying goodbye, and I get to honor that. So I know we're out of time. I'm very chatty. Sorry.
No, I love it. And I think this is such an important space. And I just really love, the the word empowerment just continuously rings out, as you're talking. So I think it's incredible, the platform that you're building, and I think it's going to serve a lot of people and provide a lot of value. So thank you so much, Candice, for speaking today. It was just so insightful for me. I learned a lot just during our conversation.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and to the HIT Lab, who has been phenomenal in helping me as a founder get to where we are. So truly grateful for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, we have another Women's Health Tech Wednesday speaker next week, so be sure to check that out. And we are also on social media, so make sure you follow us and like us so that you can kind of get to see some of the events that we have in the pipeline. And then also just wanted to say thank you again, Candice, for an incredible discussion. Really appreciate your time. And also wanted to thank our sponsor, Goodwin, for supporting the Women's Health Tech initiative, as well as this amazing conversation that we had today. Thank you all so much for your time, and see you next week.